this friend of mine,
Oh,
Sherwood.
wait. Repeat the quote. Rita and I met. Okay.
Okay. Rita and I met at her 14th birthday party. Her cousin was was dating a friend of mine, and he asked me if I would like to go to this birthday party, and I said sure. He had wheels and I didn't, so we went to Rita's house, and that's where the party was. And I met Rita, and I pretty well knew that she was the girl.
Just like that, the first time you saw her?
Kinda, yeah.
Okay, what was it about Mom that attracted? What was it?
Oh, I just liked her looks. Pretty blue eyes. Plus, she was outgoing. And I liked her name. And I liked her parents and stuff.
Yeah.
They were nice people.
Okay. All right, so you met her at her birthday party. What about the first date? And wait, let me go back. Did you go to this party to meet her, or your friend was just going, so you went with him?
No, actually, I went to meet her. I went with him, but like I said, I actually went to meet her. He told me that she didn't have a date, and we didn't go anywhere. We stayed right there at the house.
Did it go well the first?
Yeah, we danced and just do what teenagers do. I was 15, she was 14.
All right, what about the first date then? That's when y'all met, but what about the first date you went on?
Oh, golly. I'm going to say that we probably double dated with Sherwood. And I'll be honest, I can't actually remember the first date. We we went to visit her grandma. That was pretty close to a first date. Sherwood, his parents came from up around Ben Arl. And so me and Rita and Sherwood and Helen went in Sherwood's old 41 Mercury that he had. And we stayed at Grandma's house that night. And we went down to the river, and just kind of fooled around, and then we came back home.
And this is still when you were 15?
Mm-hmm.
All right, do you remember the first kiss? And describe the whole...
Probably at the birthday party. Yeah. Yeah, I think we kissed at the birthday party. Golly, that's so long ago. I thought it was great. Tough to describe something like that when you're 15 years old. You don't know what the hell's going on.
Okay. When and how did you ask her to marry you?
Okay, well, we went together for 5 years, and we went to a movie, and we kind of had a habit of parking after we went to the movie if we get done with the movie, and it was probably about 6 months before we got married. Like in January, and it was kind of a mutual thing, actually. I mean, we discussed it. It wasn't an actual "will you marry me" kind of thing. It was, we think we're both ready, and everything went fine until I found out that I had to take instructions, and then that kind of throw a little monkey wrench in it. That prolonged it a little bit.
Okay. What about what were your opinions about having children before you were married? I mean, what did y'all talk about having kids before you were married, and what was your?
Your mother did. I tried not to.
Oh wait, repeat the question. When we talked about kids before we were married. Okay, repeat that.
Okay. When we talked about kids before we were married, your mother did most of the talking. I was pretty quiet on the subject. Coming from a family with 5 kids already, 6 kids, I wasn't ready to just jump right in and start having kids. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. Or fortunately, it didn't turn out that way.
What about, how did you feel about Mom working or staying home?
Oh, there wasn't much question about that. But she had a hell of a lot better job than I did before we got married. And no, I wanted her to work. We needed the money.
Who was in charge of the money? Who was the accountant in the family?
I started out being the accountant until I carried a light bill around in my pocket for about a month, and they sent us a notice that they were going to cut our lights off, and that ended that. Your mother started being the accountant then.
How did you resolve your differences? When you got in a fight, how did y'all?
Kiss and make up.
Well, tell me again. When we did have fights.
Yeah, when we did have fights, we'd kiss and make up, and the making up was always a lot more fun.
What do you remember about your wedding day?
Well, I remember on our wedding day that our car broke down. We were headed to Galveston. We had to turn around and come back to my daddy's shop, and he fixed the car while we waited. And instead of going on to Galveston, because it took us an hour to drive back over to my dad's garage. By that time, it was already getting to be 4:30, 5 o'clock. So we found a motel out on 45, and that's where we had our honeymoon.
What is your most? What would you say was your most memorable, happiest moment being married?
I would say the times that we were able to slip off to Galveston by ourselves and leave the kids with somebody else, we would, about twice a year, we would go down to Galveston, and just the two of us, and we'd spend the weekend. Those were great times.
What about being parents? What's the secret of being? I mean, how did y'all work your being parents?
Well, the way that we worked our being parents was whatever Rita said, I backed her up, and whatever I said, she backed me up. And if there was any differences, we discussed them behind closed doors.
What is the secret to staying married for 50 years?
Probably giving each other some space. Your mother kind of had her things to do, and I had my things to do, and then we had things to do together. But I mostly took care of making the money, and she took care of seeing that the kids got what they needed. I took care of the outside of the house and stuff, and your mother took care of the inside.
What about compromise and
we did a lot of that. We had compromises. It was sometimes very difficult, but when you love somebody, you know there's got to be some compromises because not everything goes like it's supposed to. So you do what you need to do.
Did you say I love you enough?
No.
Not too late. Just make up for it.
I know.
I mean, I only say that just because I know that you felt that way. It's just different to say it more often than just think somebody knows it. You know. But well,
I don't think you ever say I love you enough. Anybody.
Yeah.
And of course, for some people, it's just a little harder to come by than others.
Well, we're all very proud of y'all.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else you want to say?
No, nothing other than I love her very much.
Do you feel like you were blessed and lucky? I mean,
Very much so. Very much so.
what did you think of? I mean, tell me what you thought about. I mean, you kind of felt like you were the rough and kid from the wrong side of the tracks, and she was this,
She was a step up.
Well, but tell me something about the way that you, because I think you've told me in the past, you kind of idolized her like she was, this princess that came from a nice family and all this, and you were, the rough kid that.
Well, yeah, I came from the Heights, and we were poorer than church mice, and I was the oldest. I quit school because I didn't feel like I had proper clothes. I went to work as soon as I quit school, and the monies I made went to help the rest of the household. I was allowed to keep a certain amount to buy clothes and things, but then eventually it got to where that I was just paying room and board. So when that took place, well, I was able to buy a car. And before that, I was going to see your mother plumb across town riding the bus. And of course, she was kind of uptown because of their house had air conditioning. Our house didn't have air conditioning. There was just the two of them. It was Don and Rita, and her parents were very nice. And after I began to go with to date Rita steady, they just really took on to me and treated me just like one of their children, and I really liked that because I kind of missed that at home. And yeah, our side of town was kind of the rough shod, and people getting into trouble all the time, that sort of thing. So yeah, she was kind of the step up for me. They used to occasionally, I would spend the night over there on their couch when it would be maybe too late for me to go home and ride the bus. But hell, at one time I sold Coke bottles and milk bottles to get enough bus money to ride over there. This was before I got a car. But and we had our ups and downs while we were dating. She had her another boyfriend that I met in the National Guard. I was in the National Guard, and this guy was in the National Guard too. And he kind of told me that that was his girl, and I wasn't to be trying to date her no more. And I just told him, I said, well, we'll just let her decide. So one of the most memorable conversations that me and Rita had was I called her up one night and I was pretty mad. I said, if you ever go with that son of a bitch. And then later on, well, this guy thought he wanted to get tough about it, but he decided different when this friend of mine and me wanted to meet him outside. Well, he didn't show up. All this was while we were going together. We had a lot of fun going to Galveston. We did that. We used to go down there in double date. Also had a lot of fun because of the fact that I did not finish school. I left school in the 10th grade. I had a lot of fun being Rita's escort to her junior prom and her senior prom. Some of my first times to ever put on a suit, which I had to borrow One of them was borrowed from one of her boyfriends, her ex-boyfriend. And then, of course, we had some kind of ups and downs after we first got married. 6 months after we got married, Rita was pregnant with Karen. I lost my job. I hit the streets back in 1958 looking for a job. There was a little recession going on. No jobs to be found in Houston. A friend of mine who I'd worked with before was working in LaPorte, and he found out that I was looking for a job, and he called me, and he said that he could probably get me on down where in LaPorte. And so I drove down and met Mr. Marks, and I went in and sat on his couch, and we chit-chatted for a few minutes, and I said, I just told him, I said, it's a long ways down here, and I said, I'm freshly married, and my wife is pregnant. I said, I couldn't even begin to think about coming down here if you decided to hire me for less than $400 a month. And he said, well, I think we can handle that. Why don't we go get a cup of coffee? And so he hired me. So I came to work down here May the 1st, 1958. And we still had our apartment on 18th Street, but we weren't staying there because it was right, Rita was 8 months pregnant. And Karen was born June the 10th, 1958. And right after she was born, well, I found us a place to live. And we moved all of our stuff down as soon as Rita was able to get around. We moved everything down to LaPorte and been here ever since. And then, of course, it would take me about 2 years to tell you the rest of it. So,
well, I think that's pretty good. Well, I don't know. I guess that's it. That's good. That's really good. All right. First, and try if you can to repeat the question. When I'll tell you, tell them a story about how you and Dad met. You say, Dad and I met, and then tell it. Okay?
Okay, but what are you going to do with this?
We're going to make something to show at the party. Alright. Tell me a story. Tell me how you and Dad met, and try to repeat the question and try to elaborate.
Okay, well, we met through my cousin's boyfriend. I had been with them at some point and seen him, and I thought he was cute. But then I was going with somebody else. But then I quit going with somebody else and decided that maybe I should hook up with this other guy because he was cute. So I arranged for them to come over one day, and then we started going together after that, and 50-something years later, here we are.
What was the occasion? What was the first time y'all met?
It was my birthday.
The first time we met was?
The first time we met was my birthday. And I can't remember what year. 1953 maybe. And I'm sure your father remembers this, but anyway. It was somewhere around there. It was before 56, so maybe 54.
What birthday would it?
Do what?
What birthday would it have been? What year? How old?
I don't remember that either. 15 or 16. Much too young.
And what did y'all do at the party?
Well, it wasn't really a party. I think we just had. Well, maybe we had cake. I can't even remember where we had a dinner. We had something, and then maybe we went out. I don't. Oh dear, that was a long time ago.
Well, elaborate a little bit more about what was it about after you met Dad. You said you thought he was cute, but what was it that attracted? Was it just that he was cute, or, and like I said, what attracted me or whatever?
Oh gee, Sam, what attracted me? Well, like I said, I thought he was nice looking. We had fun, and I wasn't going with anybody else then. And of course, you always had to have a boyfriend. You know, and he was a friend with my cousin, but the qualities. He was really kind of quiet, which is unusual for me, but I liked that, I guess. And I don't know. He always what he said he was going to do and things like that. You know, he was dependable. He had a lot of qualities, and he was still cute. I like that.
All right. So the first time y'all met was at the birthday party. But what about the first date? Can you remember what your first date was?
No, I don't. I don't remember what the first date was.
Maybe around the first dates. What did y'all do?
Well, we used to go to a lot of movies, and sometimes we would go dancing, or sometimes we would meet with some of these other friends and go to, and I can't remember the name of these places, but we would go to some place and dance. And sometimes we would just give parties that other people were giving, you know, like, I can remember we went to some memorial park a few times and just met some of the girls that I went to school with and their dates, and we would meet there and have wiener roast and things like that, and went to a lot of movies.
Do you remember the first kiss?
I think it was in the back seat of my cousin's boyfriend's car.
We'll say our first kiss was.
Oh, our first kiss was in the back seat of Sherwood Donahoe's car. Had to be. Yeah, one time or a couple of times we even went to, wasn't really a date, but we went to Ben Arnold's to visit Grandma and Grandpa. That was fun. With Helen and Sherwood.
So how long after you'd met him was the first kiss?
Oh, I don't know. The next date? I don't know, probably. The first kiss was probably the next date. It was... Yes, he wasn't shy there. And obviously I wasn't either. But
All right. How did he ask you to marry him?
oh, that was very nice. How did he propose? That was very nice. And of course I don't remember a date, but we were in the living room of my mother and daddy's house. And he actually got down on one knee and said, "Will you marry me? I love you." Or maybe it was the other way around. And put a ring on my finger. And I said yes. And that was when I was a senior in high school. Yes. The sisters didn't like that idea at all. Sister Damien gave me a really hard time. But then she loves your daddy, so it's okay.
What did y'all? How did you think about having a family before you? Did you talk about having a family before you got married? What were your views about having kids?
Our views. I don't know that your daddy had any views about having children. I did. I always wanted a number of children, but I really wanted boys. My plan was to have 6 boys. And when the first 3 were girls, it was quite a surprise. But thank you God for them. And then we got our 2 boys, and thank you God for them. And as far as planning, there really wasn't any planning to it. We just took what God gave us.
What about you working or staying home? What was it? What was y'all's? What did you think about that when y'all first got married?
That working or staying home after Karen was born. To start with, we decided that I would have the baby and go back to work. But then I had the baby. And I think there were a lot of things involved in that. First, I didn't want anybody else to keep her. I didn't want anybody else to raise my baby all of a sudden. But then I think there was some money involved too, because it probably was more expensive, or I wasn't going to be making that much. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't be profiting much after we paid for somebody to keep the baby, transportation, all of that. So we decided that I would stay home.
Who was in charge of the finances? Who was the accountant in the family?
Who was in charge of the finances? Well, for the first 35 or 40 years, we discussed everything. But I pretty much paid the bills and wrote the checks and did that kind of stuff. But I always tried to keep Dad aware anyway. He said most of the time he didn't want to be aware of what was going on.
Daddy, can you put me in here?
What do you remember most about your wedding day?
What do I remember about the wedding day? We got up fairly early, and a lady, what was that hairdresser's name? I think her name was Faye, but I'm not sure. Had opened her beauty shop early that morning so that Grandma, and Grandma Rosie too, the 3 of us, she could fix our hair before the wedding. The wedding was at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we went and got our hair done, and then went home and got dressed and went to the church. Now, my daddy was a total wreck. He was so nervous. And the 2 of us walking down the aisle was pretty funny, because he was shaking and I was too. And then afterwards, the groom was pretty nervous too. I didn't know that ahead of time, but afterwards I knew that. He didn't want to spend a lot of time at the reception. And then we left there, and the car broke down. I guess he told you all of this. The car broke down or was having trouble. So we ended up going back to his daddy's garage to get him to fix the car. And then we ended up spending the first night at at some motel on the north side of Houston. I can't even remember what street it was on. It was a far cry from the upscale place that we had reserved in Galveston anyway. And that was our wedding date. But Dad was pretty nervous, as was your grandpa.
What about tell me a little something about how did it work that the Catholic schoolgirl dates the kind of rough kid from the other side of the tracks? I mean, what was that? And how did what about your family? What did they think of it?
I don't know really what. I don't ever remember a real objection. But then, I guess they liked him all right, and it turned out to be that Larry and my mother were very close, and then Larry and my dad got to be good buddies and did a lot of things together, and he really wasn't. He was from the north side of Houston, but he really wasn't in the gangster category. I had already finished with him with the gangster category before I met your dad. So I think maybe he was certainly a step up, and so that probably pleased my parents a lot. And as far as the church, we knew. I mean, we always knew what we were going to do, I always knew what I was going to do, and he always agreed that was okay.
How did you? What were your styles about raising kids? What was your agreement? How did y'all work out the way that y'all were gonna do the kids?
How did we work that out? It was pretty simple. I would do the kids and Dad would go to work. That's usually the way it was. And and he always backed me up. If I said this is the way it's going to be, then he would back me up on it. And so that wasn't a problem. And if I needed help, I'd say, I need for you to do this. And pretty much he would do that. But mainly it was I will go to work and you will raise the children. Well,
what do you remember, or what would you say were the funnest moments or the best times that you had in 50 years?
The best times. I mean, as a family?
Well,
say yeah.
Maybe as a married couple, and then maybe separate as a family. Two different,
Oh, gee. There's a lot of things that were just good moments and that we remember. There were a lot of times that I would have some kind of wild scheme or idea that I would think that would just going to be wonderful, and then it would turn out to be maybe not quite so wonderful. We took a trip one time that I found a thing in the newspaper, and I think it was gosh, could it have been 100 miles through the big thicket? I can't remember how far it was, but anyway, basically it was a tour of the big thicket, and it was different things that you would see. And so I planned this wonderful day of all of us in the car, touring the big thicket, and we got an hour or less into the trip, or maybe it was the first stop at the kind of holly tree, a pecan, the largest holly tree in the world or something. It's supposed to be in the big thicket, and that was our first stop, and that's where it started raining. And so, like the day, it was interesting, but we had to eat our picnic in the car, and there were a lot of things like that. Christmases were always good. Christmases were always fun. We spent a lot of time in Anahuac when, I guess up until the time my mother died. So Sam didn't spend a lot of time in Anahuac, did you? No. But we spent a lot of time there, and and that was fun. We'd play games, and different ones would come. Gosh.
What would you say the secret? What is the secret to staying married for 50 years?
The secret to staying married for 50 years. Probably your father's patience. And you gotta have a lot of love with that too. And there's a lot of hills and valleys. But I don't think there's a secret. I think you decide that's what you're gonna do, and you do it.
Is there anything that you would, say that you want to say to Dad, or anything that you want to say to wrap up, or how do you feel about this occasion?
How do I feel about this occasion? Well, there's a lot of things, and just, wow, who would think we had already done 50 years? That's, whoa, it just really doesn't seem like it's been 50 years. I think back, and maybe this is me living in my, unreal world all the time, because I think back and think, wait, it can't be been 50 years. I'm not that old. Well, yes, I am. But overall, I would say yes, I would do it again. If there were some changes, if I could make changes, there's a few I would make. But even if I couldn't make changes, I would go back and do it again. And to Dad, I would say, I love you.
Is he still as cute as he was?
He's still as cute. He can be even cuter now sometimes.
What that mean? Can I get a